Hello and welcome to my video. Obviously this is my very first video, so you have no idea who I am. Let me introduce myself. I'm Paul and you are very welcome here. I'm looking forward to chatting with you over the coming videos when I make them. But for the time being, let's just say that I'm Paul, and whoever you are, wherever you're from in the world, hello internet, you are very welcome here, and I look forward to our time together. Now, I assume you're here, if there's no other reason, then you were intrigued by the title of the video, Jesus before Christianity, and you might wonder what that can mean. Well, over the next half hour or so, I shall definitely try and explain it to you. What I would like to say first of all is that I'm going to say my views of Jesus, and they may offend some. If you're strictly religious and you're a strong Christian believer and you have faith, and there's some things that I might say that may upset you. So if that's the case, my intention is never to upset anybody. That is not what I'm all about. And I just would like to say to you, if you're feeling uncomfortable with what I'm saying, then please do leave. I'm not here to persuade anybody of anything. I'm just here to tell you my story of what I think Jesus was before Christianity got hold of him. But I'll explain everything as we go along. So, I want to talk about Jesus, the flesh and blood Jesus. The Jesus who was a man, and we know he was a man. Okay, there's some theologians who say that Jesus never existed. Well, if he didn't exist as far as I'm concerned, there would be no point in making this video. So obviously, from my point of view, Jesus did exist. He was born of a woman, and he lived his life in what we now call the Holy Land, and he died crucified on a cross by the Romans. So that's, in a nutshell, what we're talking about here. However, what's really important to me is that I am able to explain to you what I think Jesus was about. It's not something that fits in with the normal things. So as I said, what you believe about Jesus and what I believe about Jesus might be completely different. They might be the same. You might have an inkling of what I'm talking about, might resonate with you, and you might think, this might be something I might be interested in. But I must make the point, I don't want to change anybody's mind. I'm not here to convince you of anything. I'm just here to tell you what I think. And if you enjoy listening to what I say, then that's great. And if it resonates with you, maybe we have a tribe. Maybe we feel the same way. Because it's not something I've talked about a lot. It's sort of been more recent for me. Although I've been feeling this way for many, many years, it's just suddenly I think I need to speak. The reason I need to speak is because there's so many videos now on YouTube and people talking about the end of days and the beast and everybody being cast down and certain people being allowed into the kingdom so-called of heaven because they've done things in a certain way. Let's move on from that. So we're talking about Jesus, we're talking about the living Christ, we're talking about a man who was flesh and blood, the same as us, a human being. We know he was a human being because he was born, Mary and Joseph, his parents. He was born in Bethlehem, and look what religion did to that. He was born. So now we have Christmas every year where we celebrate Jesus' birth, or we give lots of presents to people, or we talk about St. Nicholas and call him Santa Claus. And it's sort of become so commercialised now that you've actually lost the belief in Jesus where it is. I mean, you might have seen the nativity play in a shop window, or the nativity, and the schools, young schools always put on a nativity play where Mary loses the baby or drops it on his head or whatever. So the point is, he was born in Bethlehem, we believe, and now the scholars tell us that they believe he was born in 5 BC. And as BC stands for before Christ, that's quite ironic, but very pleasant. I enjoyed that. So if he was born in 5 BC, or now, let's say BCE, because now we don't talk about after Christ anymore, we talk about AD, BC, we talk about Common Era, before the Common Era and the Common Era. So all the calendars in the world started with Jesus' birth, apparently. So what more could you say about the man than he actually had dates, every single date for the last 2,000 20,024 years. 2024 years, I get confused. 2024 years, all the calendars have followed him. So, and he's had a big effect on all of us. Your life, you can't get through your life living in the Western world without Christianity being there. So let's talk a little bit more about, so we hear no more about Jesus. So he's born. We know he lives in, they moved from Bethlehem, they went to Nazareth. We know that Joseph had a skill. We believed he was a carpenter, so we were told. However, some scholars now say that was a mistranslation and he was something else. I think the point is that his father, Joseph, probably had a skill, so he could provide for his family. We know that Jesus had a brother called James, probably had other siblings too, they were just never mentioned. His mother Mary. Now, move on to the elephant in the room. Was she a virgin when Jesus was conceived? Was Jesus the Son of God, in so much so that God inseminated Mary? It doesn't matter if you believe that or not. For the Jesus I'm talking about, it doesn't matter. You can believe it, you don't have to believe it. It doesn't matter. It's really important that you understand that we're talking about Jesus the man. So there's a lot of, what can I say? I'm not going to say baggage, because if you really believe it and you've got faith, then that's great because you've got faith. If you haven't got faith and you haven't got those feelings, then that's fine too. It doesn't change what we're talking about with the man we're talking about, Jesus. So, he moves on through his life. We hear about him when he's 12. He apparently runs away, or doesn't run away, but he disappears from his mother and father, and they get in a panic and they go looking for him, and they find him in a temple chatting with the Pharisees, which are like basically the high priests of the temple, and they're discussing the Old Testament. They're discussing the Jewish religion, because this is important. Remember, Jesus was a Jew. Everything that happens, he wasn't, white-faced European. He was a Jew, and he was born into the Jewish religion. And this is what we need to understand, because and they were under Roman occupation as well. So we need to understand the background of Jesus if we're going to understand Jesus the man, the flesh and blood man. So he's chatting with these Pharisees, and apparently they're quite impressed with his knowledge. He asks them lots of questions, and then of course we hear no more until he becomes an adult. Well, becomes an adult until he becomes 30. Apparently he goes out into his ministry, we're told, when he's 30. So did Jesus walk about all his life with his hands held like this, supplicating and walking around barefooted and feeling and being penitent all the time? Well, the first thing we hear about Jesus is that he's at a wedding at Cana, and that the host of the wedding runs out of wine. And Mary says to him, his mother says to him, "They've run out of wine, Jesus." So he says, "Fill up some flagons with water," and he turned them into wine. So we know that Jesus didn't mind having a bit of a party himself. So when he was a teenager, maybe he got on down with his friends, maybe they had a great time. Jesus wasn't somebody who was always praying and supplicating and he knew how to have a good time. He was a man. He was a human. He was like the rest of us. He was human. So, wine's okay, as long as you don't overdo it. So that's fine. So that's Jesus. That's the first thing we hear of him. Now, in his lifetime, one of the things that Jesus did was when he was asked a question, this is during his ministry, this is when he was going out speaking to people. One of the things he did was when he was asked a question, he'd reply with a story, which was known as a parable. And they're the things I want to talk about. Not in this video, because this video we're just fleshing out his life. But in future videos, I want to go over the parables and understand what Jesus was saying, where Jesus was coming from, basically. And then we can understand better the man and what he was trying to tell us. So let's talk a little bit about a few things that happened in his life, sort of just split up. So it give you an idea of where I'm coming from. So let's talk about, So Jesus was, as you know, I said it before, he's a Jew, and he was born into the Jewish religion. So if he was teaching, going out teaching, he was talking about the Jewish religion. Some people have got it into their heads that he was teaching Christianity. There was no Christianity. He was Christ, but he was a Jew, and he was teaching about the Jewish religion. So he was saying that the Jewish religion had got a bit wonky. I mean, I can't think of a better word. It had got a bit wonky, a bit like Christianity has, but that's another story for later. He thought so what he was saying was, let me give you an example. This will be my little parable, a story to explain it to you. Here in the Western world, on Valentine's Day, which is the season of love in February, on Valentine's Day, you're expected to give your partner, or it is expected for you to give your partner a bunch of roses, or a rose. But roses seems to be the big thing. Well, you can imagine, can't you? You can buy roses a week before, because they're not going to last that long. You can buy roses a week before, and they're whatever they cost. And you can buy roses the day afterwards, and they're whatever they cost. But that few days up till Valentine's Day, February the 14th, those roses, price of them goes through the roof. Now, we all know that is capitalism at its best. What's happening there is people who grow those roses and sell those roses put the price up because they can. They say it's supply and demand. Yes, they can supply it and there's a bigger demand for it, so they'll charge more for it. And they know people will pay it. Well, the thing is with that, you can decide not to pay it if you so choose. You can think to yourself, I'm not going to pay that amount of money. I'll buy my partner a bunch of roses the week before, or I'll buy her a bunch of roses the week after. Whether your partner thinks you're a cheapskate for doing that or not is another story. But the point is, you've got the choice. Well, in the first century, the Jewish religion had Passover. Well, they still do have Passover, but we're talking about in those days. Now, one of the things you had to do was sacrifice a lamb, because you had to wipe the blood of the lamb across the top of your door. Now, everybody had to sacrifice a lamb. You couldn't say, oh, I'll do it the week before, I'll do it the week after. But it wasn't just any lamb. It had to be a special lamb, a cleansed lamb, a lamb that you were going to have to get from a particular place that was going to cost you a particularly big arm and a leg. Now, what you need to understand is a lot of people in those days were very, very poor, and they were surviving week to week, and they maybe grow a few crops or whatever, and that would last them through the winter. But because they had to sell some stuff so they could afford to buy this lamb off this guy that was making a huge fortune and probably giving it a backhander to the Pharisees, the priests in the temple, because they were forcing them to buy these lambs, they might actually go hungry. And that was the sort of thing that Jesus was saying about the way the religion had gone, the way the Jewish religion had gone, the way the pharaohs were treating people, about power again. It's just no different today, is it? It's about those with power clinging onto it and making other people, keeping them down. So, Jesus was upset by this. And I'm going to go on and show you how upset he got about all these things. So he was upset about that. Now also, let's look at Sabbath. Now, in the Torah, or their book, is about the Sabbath is a special day. Well, it is a special day, and it's a day that you should rest and not work. However, Jesus and his disciples were wandering around one Saturday, as it was Sabbath day, and they were rubbing wheat or corn in their hands. Now, it shows you how petty everything was getting with the Pharisees, because he was starting to really annoy them now, Jesus. I'll tell you about that in a minute. And then the Pharisees accused them of working on the Sabbath. And Jesus said, it's my Sabbath. I can choose what I want to do on my Sabbath. See, if you were a farmer and you had a little small holding, well, not a farmer, but a little small holding, and you had a few chickens and a pig and a goat or whatever, and on the night before Sabbath, the fence had all got ripped down in a wind or a storm or something, a rock had gone through it, then obviously on the next day you wanted to repair it because you wanted to stop the wild animals coming in and eating your chickens or killing your pig or stopping people's stealing. Because you weren't allowed to. And what Jesus was saying was, this is ridiculous. This isn't what the book says at all. And then because the Pharisees say things to Jesus about, did you want to make changes to the book, of course, which would have been a real heretic thing to do. And Jesus turned around and said, no, I do not want to change one jot of the writings. Because what he's saying is, the writings are fine, it's the way you're interpreting them, guys. And let's get on to the big one, the one you probably know about. The one in the temple, what you probably heard of as the money lenders. Well, actually, they were money changers. It's a bit subtle. So, you're going to the temple, you have to go every so often, and when you go, you have to give money as a an offering and money. However, your money's dirty. We don't want your money in the temple. No, no, no. You have to change your rubbish old money because it's been in a market and it might have been touched by a butcher or a fishmonger or whatever. You've got to buy our special coins, the coins that you can use in the temple because they're clean and fresh. Of course, you've got to pay through the nose for them. So here's all the coins. You pay me and I'll give you a coin. But you're going to have to pay me a lot, because I'm going to rip you off, because I've got a backhander and I've got to give it to the Pharisees so that I can have this table here and do this money. So their money changes. Well, you know what happened. You obviously, if you know about Jesus, you know he lost his rag. He started, which is the only time in his life he did, as far as we know, throwing tables and money lenders all over the shop. He was so incensed by the greed and the well, yeah. I mean, I'm going to get incensed myself, so I won't go on. So do you understand where Jesus was coming from? Jesus was talking about, he wasn't teaching Christianity. Jesus was talking about their own religion, the Jewish religion. And he was saying how it had got mixed up, how it had been interpreted so that the rich got richer and the poor got poorer, and everybody in power could keep their power because they kept moving things around so that you couldn't get into power unless your father was somebody else's brother, sister, uncle. You know, the sort of thing. Sound familiar? Doesn't it just? Now, Jesus really annoyed the Pharisees. We're going to do all these. We'll go into the full story in other videos. We'll do it a stage at a time. But where we're at the moment is Jesus has really upset the Pharisees. He's going out and he's ministering, and thousands of people are turning up. We heard about the Sermon on the Mount, 5,000 people. I mean, and these people are loving him because they're loving him, because he's saying to them, hey, you know, Sabbath, you can do what you like on the Sabbath, as long as you're resting. You mustn't actually work, but you know, you can put your fences back up, you can rehang your door, do a bit of decorating, not go down the shops. They were shut on the Sabbath. But that sort of thing. So, you know, there was no going out to your big shopping centres on a Sunday like people do now. However, the point is that he was giving them the things they wanted to hear. And because the Pharisees were going nutty, because he was pulling all these people away from them. So they were getting worried that he was going to start his own sect and move them away so they wouldn't have the power over them anymore. Because Jesus wasn't saying to them, come with me, pay me lots of money and I'll look after you and all the rest of it. He was just saying, be yourself. And we will get into that, I promise, in videos further down the line. So the Pharisees are getting really fed up with him, so they get onto the Romans. Now, I don't know if you know about Roman history, but the Romans were very clever. They'd invade a country. They didn't care what religion you had. Your religion could be whatever you want it to be. You could go and love fish, or you could, it doesn't matter. They didn't care what your religion was. They're not stupid. They didn't want to turn your world upside down. What did the Romans do? They wanted you to pay your taxes and not riot. Pay your taxes and behave. That's it. That's what they wanted from you. So from a Roman point of view, Jesus doing what Jesus did, they couldn't have cared less. However, the Pharisees said to the Romans, hey, this guy's starting to stir people up. Look how many people are following him around. Look what's going on. And the Romans are looking at it and thinking, yeah, so. And the Pharisees are saying, yeah. But, you know, the Messiah's supposed to come. And the Messiah's going to raise everybody up into a great army, because that's what the prophets have said, into a great army and throw you out the country. No, we're not having any of that. We're not having any of that, the Romans said. So they took him away. Grabbed him, took him away. You know the story, Last Supper, all that. We'll do all that properly in another video. I'm just giving you a fleshing out. So they take him away, have a quick trial, crucify him, he's dead. So that is the story. Now, this is where it all starts to go wrong. But don't forget, don't think that's it. I haven't told you about all the things that Jesus said in his lifetime and all his ministerings, which is what basically is what I'm trying to. What's important is you understand Jesus the man, what he was trying to teach us in here in 2024 or whatever year this is, if you're in the future. But he's trying to teach us how to live, how to live with other people, how to live in a society that works, that is real. But anyway, so I lost the plot. So he's been crucified, and as I said, this is where it all starts to go wrong. So let's just jump forward a couple of hundred years to Constantine. Constantine, oh, first of all, we know that the Christians were all being thrown to the lions and that. We'll talk about that later. However, Constantine, the emperor, Roman emperor, a couple of hundred years after Christ, he's having a look and he's thinking, this is good, this Christian religion, I like this, because Christianity was a couple of hundred years on now, and Paul had done his bits, and Paul had done a bit, we'll talk about that later. So Constantine, I like this, we could make the whole empire go Christian, because I like the idea of one God, and we'll get to this in another video, but because what Jesus was teaching was that everybody, if they led a good life, would go, religion says heaven. We'll talk about that later. But yes, so you're going to have a life after life. So don't forget, a lot of these people were really, really suffering. I mean, hand to mouth, day to day, just surviving. A lot of people. So being told that when this was all over and you died, you were going to go off and you were going to live in heaven on the right hand side of God, and you were going to have all whatever you wanted, and it's going to just be wonderful. Well, got to be better than being on earth, hasn't it? So that was why the Christian religion had taken that on board, and that's where it was going. So anyway, as I get back to it, so Emperor Constantine said, I love this. This is a brilliant idea. We'll do Christianity. So his mum, who was also very involved with the Jesus story, said to him, problem there, Constantine. What's that, Mum? We killed him. Ah, we did, didn't we? That is going to be a bit of a problem. We crucified him on the cross, yet we're saying that he is the Son of God now, aren't we? Because that's what the Christians say, and we're going to take on the religion, but we killed him on the cross. That doesn't look good look, is it? That's not a good look. However, perhaps if we write into the story that Pontius Pilate stood up and looked at everybody and said, are you sure you want him dead? Asked them 3 times, and when they say yes, he can get a bowl of water and he can wash his hands of it all, then we're in the clear, aren't we? Because we're Romans and we didn't do anything. Brilliant. And that's where you go. That's where the Christianity comes in. Do you see? Okay, I haven't finished yet. So, go back to the time of Jesus. Jesus has just died. Did he come back did he resurrect? I don't know. I really don't know. If I had faith, I'd say he did. If I didn't have faith, I'd say he didn't. But it doesn't matter. We're talking about the man. We're talking about the man and his life and what he taught. And that's what we're going to do over the next few videos. But for this one, for now, let's go back and see. Just after he died, you had James and you had St. Paul. So James, his brother James, the disciple, was working on the religion, the things that Jesus was teaching, as a sect of the Jewish religion. And if there hadn't been for St. Paul, that's all it would have been. It would have been a sect of a Jewish religion, just another sect. However, St. Paul, a Jew who was a Roman citizen, had something or other on the road to Damascus, as we know, and he suddenly realised that Jesus was the man, and he had to go out there and start talking about Jesus the man. So he took it on and started giving the religion to people who weren't Jews, known as Gentiles. Anybody who's not a Jew is a Gentile to a Jew. So he's out there preaching all the stuff to lots of Gentiles, which is where the Christianity comes in. Because now it's not a Jewish religion anymore, it's become something else. And then they start talking about the kingdom of heaven, and then they start talking about Jesus coming back, and he's going to raise everybody up who's been good and done what they've been told, and who's lived a good life and all the rest of it. And then it starts to get all twisted and twisty. And even then, 200 years, 300 years, it's not really the teachings of Jesus. How do I know that? Well, I know that because you've got the Gospels, but you've also got new Gospels, which are called canonical Gospels, because way back in about 400, you can look it up when you Google, you can look all these things up, about 400 years after Christ, they decided that they were going to have a big conflab about what was heretical and what was true. I mean, so you had the 4 Gospels, and then you had some canonical Gospels which have been discovered, which see Jesus in a different light. And do you know what? When I read one of them, I thought, really, that fits in with the Jesus I believe in, that fits in with the Jesus I know. So that's where we're at. So I hope you've enjoyed what I've had to say to you. I hope it hasn't been wasted on you. And if you've come this far with me, thank you, thank you. I'm really grateful that you've come this far. If you'd like to see more, because this is the very first video, you might be, in the future, this is past Paul, but maybe future Paul will look at this, there's only been one view over 5 years or something. If that's the case, then we've had one view. If there's been no views at all, I can live with that as well. I just want to share. And like I said, this is really important. I don't want to change anybody's mind. I don't want to convince anybody of anything. I just want to share my story. I just feel I need to, because of the way things are going in the world with people. I mean, I don't want to offend anybody, but there are people out there that are using their Christianity to frighten people, to say this is the end of days, the beast, the 666, blah, 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 blah. That's not what Jesus was teaching. And I'm going to show you that over the coming videos, with mainly from his talking, feeding of the 5,000, Sermon on the Mount, some of the stories he tells, and some of the stories he tells are really quite funny, and you're going to enjoy those. You are. And I'm going to explain, because one of the things I've discovered is when you talk to people about some of his parables, he talks about, a mustard seed. But most people don't know what a mustard seed does and how it grows. So it's a pretty meaningless. So that's the point. So you've got this far with me. Thank you. Please do subscribe now. Maybe have 1 or 2 subscribers in a year or so. I don't know. And I will just keep making videos, because I've got so much I want to tell you, so much I need to tell you, because I think that if a few of us see Jesus as I believe he should be seen, and then I'm never going to ask for money. I'm not going to do one of those American preacher things. I'm not interested in money. I'm not interested in any of those things. I'd just like to get this channel going. I'd like to share what I know, and I'd like a bit of a vibe. So if you'd like to comment, please do comment. Hate won't go down very well, because we're talking about Jesus, and if you're a strong Christian and you're going to hate what I'm saying, then you're not a Christian. Okay, love everybody, love your neighbour, turn the other cheek. Yeah. On the other side of the coin, if you'd like to ask some questions, I promise I won't have time to answer you all, and I won't have time to thank you all, but I'll thank you now if you're going to comment. But I will say I will read all your questions, and hopefully over the coming videos I'll answer your questions anyway, because I've got so much to say about this wonderful man Jesus. And I'm just going to say it again. It doesn't matter what your belief is. It doesn't matter. It doesn't change what Jesus was teaching. It doesn't change it. So again, thank you so much. Subscribe, ding the bell thing, so that you know that I made another video. Do comment. It helps well, I'd like to know what you think anyway. Forget the because it helps with the SEOs and all that. Really, thank you for coming this far with me. God, I feel so, I don't know. I feel weight's gone off my shoulders. I really do. And thank you. And I'll speak to you again soon. Bye bye.